From translation, NKJV New King James Version, this 143 day of the year, today we are reading passages Ezra 8-10, Ezra chapter 8, verses 1 to 38. These are the leaders of the people. Of the descendants of Phinehas, Gershom, of Isamar, Daniel, of David, Hushai, of Shechaniah, Zechariah, of Aaron, Meshullam, of Shephatiah, Obadiah, of Mahalalel, Shebaniah, of Joab, Jehinathan, of Jediah, Uzi, of Meremoth, Piltai, of Adnikam, Elishama, of Shephatiah, Ramoth, of Mithridith, Shemaiah, of Bani, Jehinathan, of Bebai, Zechariah, of Meshullam, Meshulemith, of Hashabiah, Shemuel, of Jo, Hananiah, of Jediah, Uttai, of Salu, Amariah, of Hakosh, Hashub, of Bani, Shimei, of Bani, Amariah, of Malach, Hattush, of Shechaniah, Harim, of Anani, Obadiah. Now I gathered them by the river that flows to Ahava, and we stayed there 3 days. And I looked among the people and the priests, and found none of the descendants of Levi there. So I sent for Eleazar, Ariel, Shemaiah, Elnathan, Jarib, Elnathan, Nathan, Zechariah, and Meshullam, leaders, for Joiarib and Elnathan, men of understanding, and for their brethren, Sherebiah, Hashabiah, 10 of their brethren. And I sent them to Iddo the chief, at the place Casiphia, and told them what to say to Iddo and his brethren the temple servants at the place Casiphia, namely, to bring ministers to us for the house of our God. Then, by the good hand of our God, they brought us a man of understanding, of the descendants of Mali, the son of Levi, the son of Israel, namely Sherebiah with his sons and his brethren, 18 men, and Hashabiah with Jeshaiah of the descendants of Merari, his brethren and their sons, 20 men. And they brought with them 220 temple servants, a gift from King Artaxerxes to the king, his counselors, and all his leaders and friends. Also they brought to us 100 talents of silver, 6,000 gold drams and 20 gold vessels, and 2 vessels of fine copper, equal in value to gold. And I said to them, You are holy to the Lord, the vessels are holy also. And the silver and gold are a freewill offering to the Lord God of your fathers. Watch and keep them until you weigh them in the chambers of the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, and the priests, the descendants of Levi, and the Levites will receive the silver and gold to carry to Jerusalem to the house of our God. Then I selected 12 of the leading priests, Sherebiah, Hashabiah, and 10 of their brethren with them, and I weighed out to them the silver and gold and the vessels, the offering for the house of our God which the king and his counselors and his leaders and all Israel who were present had offered. And I said to them, You are set apart to the Lord. Take the silver and gold and vessels, and go to Jerusalem and carry them to the house of your God. Then I separated 12 of the leading priests, Sherebiah, Hashabiah, and with them 10 of their brethren. And I weighed out to them the silver and gold and the vessels, the offering for the house of our God which the king and his counselors and his leaders and all Israel who were present had offered. And I said to them, You are set apart to the Lord. Take the silver and gold and vessels, and go to Jerusalem and carry them to the house of your God. Then I separated 12 of the leading priests, Sherebiah, Hashabiah, and with them 10 of their brethren, and I weighed out to them the silver and gold and the vessels, the offering for the house of our God which the king and his counselors and his leaders and all Israel who were present had offered. And I said to them, You are set apart to the Lord. Take the silver and gold and vessels, and go to Jerusalem and carry them to the house of your God. So we departed from the river Ahava on the 12th day of the first month, to go to Jerusalem. And the hand of our God was upon us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy and ambushers by the way. Now we came to Jerusalem, and remained there 3 days. And on the 4th day the silver and the gold, and the vessels were weighed in the house of our God, by the hand of Meremoth the son of Uriah the priest, with some of the priests and Levites. And the weight of the silver was 500 talents, and 3,730 shekels, according to the shekel of the temple. The weight of the gold was 20,000 darics, and the vessels of gold, 2,000, and the vessels of silver, 4,000 darics, and the vessels of brass, as many as were desired. And the prisoners who had been taken captive from exile offered burnt offerings to the God of Israel, 12 bulls for all Israel, 96 rams, 77 lambs, and 12 male goats as a sin offering, all this as a burnt offering to the Lord. And they delivered the king's orders to the king's lieutenants and the governors on this side of the river. So they helped the people and the house of God. Ezra chapter 9 verses 1 to 15. When these things were done, the leaders came to me, saying, The people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the peoples of the lands, with respect to the abominations of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken some of their daughters as wives for themselves and their sons, so that the holy seed is mixed with the peoples of those lands. Indeed, the hands of the leaders and rulers have been foremost in this trespass. So when I heard this, I tore my garment and my robe, and plucked out the hair of my head and beard, and sat down astonished. Then everyone who trembled at the words of the God of Israel, because of the unfaithfulness of those who had been carried away, gathered to me, and I was astonished until the evening offering. At the evening offering I arose from my fasting. And having torn my garment and my robe, I fell on my knees and spread out my hands to the Lord my God, and said, O my God, I am too ashamed and humbled to lift up my face to you, my God. For our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has grown up to the heavens. Since the days of our fathers to this day we have been very guilty, and for our iniquities we, our kings, and our priests have been delivered into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to captivity, to plunder, and to humiliation, as it is this day. And now for a little while grace has been shown from the Lord our God, to leave us a remnant to escape, and to give us a peg in his holy place, that our God may lighten our eyes, and give us a little life in our bondage. For we were slaves, yet you have brought us into our place, which is a delight to our eyes, and you have given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now, O our God, what shall we say after this? For we have forsaken your commandments, which you commanded by your servants the prophets, saying, The land which you are entering to possess is an unclean land, with the filth of the peoples of the lands, with their abominations which have filled it from one end to another with their impurity. Therefore do not give your daughters to their sons, nor take their daughters for your sons, never seek their peace or their prosperity forever, that you may be strong and eat the good of the land, and leave it as an inheritance to your children forever. And after all that has come upon us for our evil deeds and for our great guilt, since you our God have punished us less than our iniquities deserve, and have given us such deliverance as this, should we again break your commandments, and join in marriage with the people committing these abominations? Would you not be angry with us until you had consumed us, so that there would be no remnant or survivor? O Lord God of Israel, you are righteous, for we are left as a remnant, as we are this day. Here we are before you in our guilt, though no one may stand before you because of this. Ezra chapter 10, verses 1 to 44. Now while Ezra was praying, and while he was confessing, weeping, and bowing down before the house of God, a very large assembly of men, women, and children gathered to him from Israel. For the people wept bitterly. And Shechaniah the son of Jehiel, of the descendants of Elam, spoke up and said to Ezra, We have trespassed against our God, and have taken foreign wives from the peoples of the land. Yet there is hope in Israel in spite of this. Now therefore let us make a covenant with our God to put away all these wives and those who have been born to them, according to the advice of my master, and of those who fear the commandments of our God. And let it be done according to the law. Arise, for this matter is your responsibility. We also are with you. Be of courage and do it. Then Ezra arose and made the leading priests, the Levites, and all Israel swear that they would do according to this word. So they swore an oath. Then Ezra withdrew from before the house of God, and went to the chamber of Jehohanan the son of Eliashib. And when he came there, he ate no bread, nor drank water, for he mourned because of the trespass of those of the captivity. And they issued a proclamation throughout Judah and Jerusalem to all the descendants of the captivity, that they should gather at Jerusalem, and whoever would not come within 3 days, according to the instructions of the leaders and elders, all his possessions would be confiscated, and he himself would be separated from the assembly of those who had been carried away. So all the men of Judah and Benjamin gathered at Jerusalem within 3 days. It was the 9th month, on the 20th day of the month, and all the people sat in the open square before the house of God, trembling at the presence of God and at the words of the prophet Ezra. Then Ezra the priest stood up and said to them, You have transgressed and have taken foreign wives, adding to the guilt of Israel. Now therefore make confession to the Lord God of your fathers, and do his will. Separate yourselves from the peoples of the land, and from the foreign wives. Then all the assembly answered and said with a loud voice, Yes, as you have said, so we must do. But the people are many, and it is the rainy season, nor can we stand outside. Besides, this matter is not 1 day's work, for we are many who have transgressed in this matter. Let our leaders stand for all the people, and let all those in our cities who have taken foreign wives come at appointed times, along with the elders and judges of every city, until the fierce wrath of our God is turned away from us in this matter. Only Jonathan the son of Asahel and Jahaziah the son of Tikvah opposed this, and Meshullam and Shabbatai the Levite helped them. Then the descendants of the captivity did so. And Ezra the priest, with certain leading men of fathers' houses, were separated by their fathers' houses, and all of them by name. And they sat down on the 1st day of the 10th month to examine the matter. By the 1st day of the 1st month, they had finished with all the men who had taken foreign wives. Among the descendants of the priests, the following had taken foreign wives: of the sons of Jeshua the son of Jozadak and his brethren, Marciah, Eleazar, Jarib, and Jedaliah, and they gave their hands that they would put away their wives. And being guilty, they offered a ram of the flock for their guilt. Of the descendants of Immer, Hanani and Zebediah. Of the descendants of Harim, Maaseiah, Elijah, Shemaiah, Jehiel, and Uzziah. Of the descendants of Pashhur, Elionai, Maaseiah, Ishmael, Nethanel, Jozabad, and Elasa. Of the Levites, Jozabad, Shimei, Keliah, that is, Kelita, Pethahiah, Judah, and Eliezer. Of the singers, Eliashib. Of the gatekeepers, Shallum, Telem, and Uri. And of the rest of Israel, of the sons of Parosh, Ramiah, Jeziah, Malchijah, Mijamin, Eleazar, Malchijah, and Benaiah. Of the sons of Elam, Mattaniah, Zechariah, Jehiel, Abdi, Jeremoth, and Eliah. Of the sons of Zatu, Elionai, Eliashib, Mattaniah, Jeremoth, Zabad, and Aziza. Of the sons of Bebai, Jehohanan, Hananiah, Sabai, and Athli. Of the sons of Bani, Meshullam, Malach, and Adiah, Jashub, Sheel, and Jeremoth. Of the sons of Pahath Moab, Adnah, Chelal, Benaiah, Maaseiah, Mattaniah, Bezalel, Binui, and Manasseh. And of the sons of Harim, Eleazar, Ishijah, Malchijah, Shemaiah, and Shimon. Of the sons of Hashem, Mattanai, Mattata, Zabad, Eliphelet, Jeremiah, Manasseh, and Shimei. Of the sons of Bani, Mardai, Amram, and Yul. Of the sons of Bani, Bigui, Chelai, Shemaiah. And of the sons of Bani, Bebai, Birah, Zizah, and Jewel. Of the sons of Bebai, Jehohanan, Hananiah, Sabai, Athli. And of the sons of Bani, Meshullam, Malach, and Adiah, Jashub, Sheel, Jeremoth. And of the sons of Bani, Shimei, Shelemiah, Nathan, Adiah, Malach, Hattush, Shobai, and Salim. And of the sons of Bani, Mardai, Amram, and Yul. Of the sons of Bani, Mardai, Benaiah, Chelal, Benaiah, Azaz, Jeroham, Jediel, and Shelemiah. And of the sons of Bani, Benaiah, Jehinathan, Jaziah, and Pepijah. And of the sons of Asaph, Zechariah, Jehiel, Shemiramoth, Jemuel, Mattithiah, Uriel, Zachar, and Shemaiah. And of the sons of Heman, Jehiel, Shimei, and Uzziel. And of the descendants of Jeduthun, Shimei, and Uzziel, and Jehiel.